Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to the April 20th, 2023 SPRC subgroup meeting for the 4600 Fairfax Drive, otherwise known as the Boston Holiday Inn Site Plan. We'll be holding a hybrid public meeting, which enables remote electronic participation and legally authorized by the Post Virginia per the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy adopted July 7th, 2022. Members of the SPRC subgroup for 4600 Drive are participating both here and in person virtually through electronic means. SPRC subgroup members participating virtually include, I believe, Mr. Feaster is the only one we have currently present. At this time, I'd like to remind and orient everyone to our hybrid environment and cover a few specifics about how today's meeting will run. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the SPRC webpage. The project webpage, the county's event calendar, and the email notification sent to SPRC email subscribers. Additionally, there is a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. For our subgroup members joining virtually, if anyone loses internet connectivity during today's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your phones and devices muted until you are called upon. Turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed. I will address when it is appropriate to turn it on in a moment. Microsoft Teams meeting chat is active to serve two purposes: for the SPRC subgroup members who need technical assistance, and for members of the public to add their name to the list for public comment, which will be taken at the end of the meeting. Team chat should not be used for discussion. Those who were planning to provide public comment will still need to do so at the end of the meeting, as the chat will not serve as that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period, which will be at the end of the meeting again. Subgroup members are participating virtually, wish to be recognized to speak on an item during the course of the meeting. Please turn your video feed and raise the virtual hand in Teams. I'll try to notice that. If not, staff will remind me, and we'll try to call on you when you speak. Subgroup members are participating via phone today without video option. Please announce your name for the group and who you are representing. I'll verbally check to see if you wish to be recognized. I don't think we have anyone doing that this evening. For members of the public who would like to provide feedback and comment, you will be called on to speak at the end of the meeting, and we will be allotted 2 to 3 minutes to speak on tonight's agenda item. The speaking time allotted will depend on the number of speakers we have this evening. If you wish to speak, please enter your name in the meeting chat for virtuals. Persons, and do we have any members of the public who wish to speak at the end of the meeting tonight? Can you raise your hand real quick so I can see? Is there anybody who wishes to be recognized at the end of the meeting to speak?
We got one.
One, okay, that's one to know. Lastly, this is the public forum. Tonight's meeting. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county webpage. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. With that, welcome everyone to our SPRC here in April. I am Stephen Hughes. I first would be remiss if I did not first thank my co-chair for substituting in at the last meeting of this SPRC subgroup. Thank you, Jim. I really do appreciate it. And with that, I would like for everyone who's here at the table, please go around, introduce yourself by name. I'll try to be as good as I can be, and then we will know each other a little bit better, and then we'll have our one person online introduce himself. So if you're here at the table, let's start with Ian.
Thea Bagley, Planning Commission.
Thea Sarley, Planning Commission.
David Smith, Luma Civic Association.
Earhart with Hoffman.
Kathy Puskar with Walsh Collegiate on behalf of applicant.
Jane Kim, Arlington County Transportation.
Adam Watson, Arlington County Planning.
Stephen Hughes, SPRC Chair and Planning Commission.
David Howell, Forestry and Natural.
Joe McIntyre, Climate Change, Energy and Environment.
Mark Greenwood with C2E2. Chris Blatt with the Transportation Commission. Jim Lantelme, Planning Commission.
Melissa Riggio, Parks and Recreation Commission.
Collier Cook, Boston Virginia Square Civic Association.
And do we have anybody else who's on our SPRC who's sitting around the room who's not at the table?
I'm Mike Heminger of Housing.
Mike, you want to grab maybe a seat here at the table? It makes my life easier to try to remember everyone who's here. If you don't mind. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. With that, I think. Oh, Jim, would you mind introducing yourself from Teams?
Jim Feaster, Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Thanks, Jim. Is there anybody else we have up there? Check virtually. Let's check one more time.
Dawn. Actually,
HLME.
with the HOA.
HOA. John, are you representing the HOA this evening? John Missoula? I think we have you as our, can unmute yourself, want to make sure you're here to introduce yourself. We can unmute him. John, we can't unmute you from here, so if you do, please unmute yourself. Was Vince Lopez? No. I don't see. John, do check if you can, make sure, we want to make sure we know if you raise your hand or let us know if you're having issues with your mic. All right, back to our hybrid policy. So instead of having to watch the YouTube channel, we're going to hear from Adam this evening first with a brief introduction, followed by our applicant team. They promised me brevity, and I asked for each of us to also honor that as well as we move forward this evening. We'll move forward. Adam.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Everybody see this?
Okay.
All right, so first I'm just going to start off just really briefly with where we are in terms of the public review process and schedule. We had our online engagement back in July of last year. We had our first SPRC meeting in October where we talked about the sort of conceptual site layout that the applicant had come forth with since our original submission that everybody saw back in July. We had our second SPRC meeting in February. We talked about the ground level uses, site circulation, orientation, access to the site. We also talked about the buildings in terms of their massing and architecture. So here today, April 20th, we're going to talk about some updates that the applicant has to their plans. We'll talk about transportation in more depth, landscaping and stormwater management, the construction timeline, and then community benefits as well. And so the next step after this would be for this item to head to commission meetings at a date yet to be determined, basically dependent upon when we receive the fully revised site plan application. I think everybody in the room knows where this site is, 4600 Fairfax Drive. We're about a block or two from the Ballston Metro Station, just on the other side of Glebe. Site's access from Fairfax and also from the south by Woodrow and Wakefield Streets. The heart of this, which the applicant has more detailed slides to talk about, is that the single family detached homes, the two parcels that were furthest to the south of this site, have been removed from the application, and so has the associated rezoning for those parcels. And so, of course, therefore, the building number 4, the triplex to the far south, that building has been removed from the application as well. The building face of this multifamily building has been extended about 14 feet to the south. The fire access road has been realigned or straightened, probably more concise way of saying it. There's also some enhancements to the lay-by on the Fairfax Drive frontage. The applicant has better slides to talk about that. But the net change here is a reduction of 11 units because we're adding 1 unit in the multifamily building and then again losing 12 with that building number 4 triplex. In terms of parking spaces, there's 6 additional spaces that have been added to the multifamily building, and no changes to the parking that's provided for those triplex buildings on the western frontage. So in terms of transportation, I think I mentioned on the previous slide, we have 383 spaces or 0.88 space per dwelling unit ratio for the multifamily building. Triplex buildings are parked at 1 space per dwelling unit. However, there's essentially tandem parking. We don't count that for zoning purposes, but effectively the parking ratio is 2 spaces per dwelling unit for the triplexes. As we discussed last time, loading is accessed on the south side of the site, and the garage entry point, which is the sole sort of vehicular access point for this multifamily building, is off Fairfax Drive. The big thing in terms of policy guidance, the limited policy guidance that we have for this site is that we're getting multi-use trail that's connecting Woodrow up to Fairfax. That's consistent with our MTP bicycle element for adding a West Ballston extension and a 12-foot clear path with landscaping on both sides for that pathway. Fairfax Drive is also very important, obviously, for connecting the Blue Line Trail. We're also getting a 12-foot wide clear path there as well. The applicant has some cross sections of these to show, which we can discuss in more detail when it comes to transportation. Highlights of landscaping and stormwater management. Again, we have pretty limited guidance, site-specific guidance in terms of landscaping here, but the applicant is achieving what's recommended in the Ballston sector plan in terms of having plantings and walls along the western and southern edges of this site to create more of a transition to the lower density neighborhoods. We're going to discuss some potential for adding additional street trees along Fairfax Drive and on the southern edge of the site. And then again, overall, in terms of what exists today, this proposal would be a reduction of 9% over the existing conditions in terms of a reduction in impervious surface area. In addition, the project is going to meet or exceed all of the requirements we have under the Chesapeake Bay ordinance. Okay, so community benefits. When I speak about this, I'm talking about things the developer is doing to earn additional density. So this is above and beyond what a standard site plan application would do, or what any site plan would do to fulfill the goals of a sector plan. For example, the trail. The applicant is requesting 0.24 FAR additional density for fulfilling our green building incentive policy. That's LEED Gold. And just a couple highlights here, because everything listed here is essentially a prerequisite for this level of density. So we have 20% energy optimization, Energy Star, post-occupancy certifications, minimum score of 75, Energy Star appliances, fixtures, WaterSense plumbing fixtures, and then a list of a number of other prerequisites, which includes EV parking. For example, 4% of spaces would be ready to go, or excuse me, would be EV, and then 15% would be EV ready. Bird-friendly materials, I mentioned that also because I think that was raised at the last meeting as well. So, Stephen, that is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to yield back any time if there is any.
Great. Thanks so much. Once again, Kathy Puskar with Walsh Colucci, and I'm going to try and run through this quickly as the chair has asked me to do. So if I miss something, I'm sure you'll ask me a question.
Second should be.
I'd be happy to answer. Okay. Just like, okay. So quickly going through this, you'll see the previous site plan on the left and the current on the right. And the big story for this month is that we did remove the triplex units on the south. So that's a reduction of 12 triplex units. That allowed us to do a number of things, including straightening out that road. There were a lot of conversations about the southern portion of the property and kind of the way the road kinked and what that did to the intersections and pedestrian access, et cetera. So we removed those triplexes, which extended the multifamily building. It's a little bit, it's hardly perceptible here, but 14 feet to the south, and then straightened out that road. Next page. As you can see in this blow up, whoops, back one. As you can see in this exhibit, you can see at the very bottom outlined in white. Those are the two single family parcels that we removed from the application. And so those will remain single family home lots. Next. Blowing up this area to just show you some of the improvements, a little more detail based on what we talked about at the last SPRC. We've included sidewalks on both sides of that street now. We've added sharrows to the drive aisle. And we've also created signage or shown location for signage and stop signs at those intersections. And then also the identification of pedestrian and bicycle crossings. Next. And this just provides you a cross section to show you a little bit more of what's going on here and what's happening below grade. There is an existing brick wall that will remain. A portion of it will need to be removed to facilitate the intersection improvements, road improvements toward Wakefield, but the remainder of that wall will remain. We are planning to do landscaping along that southern portion as a transition to the single family neighborhood. I did want to point out, and you'll see these in the cross sections as we walk around the site, there are existing easements that will remain in various locations on the property. And so our goal is to try and put the trees where they're supposed to be. However, if we get out on the site and find that the condition is other than what we now believe to be the case, and we feel fairly fairly confident that this is the case, but you can see that there are some existing easements that cause constraints. That is why on the north side, we do not have street trees, but we do have some low-level landscaping. Next. Moving up to the western portion of Fairfax Drive, focusing on the area with the mountable curb. We had some conversation about this the last time. Our goal is to prevent single occupancy vehicles from accessing that curb cut, right? We want to make it clear that it is just for emergency vehicles. So once again, you'll see that we're adding signage there. We do have a mountable curb. We're using permeable pavers, but we're also adding bollards. So the fire department would be able to remove those if and when they need access for emergency purposes. But most times that will just look exactly like it is right there. And then just moving farther east, you'll see striping for the bicycle connection, bicycle lane connections. And then we're going to move east on Fairfax Drive to look at the lay-by area. Sorry, next slide. Whoops. There you go. So the last time we had a conversation about the fact that the parking garage entrance is here, and there were some suggestions, including making it more clear through striping and signage that that easternmost entrance is right out only. We have to maintain the width of that exit because it's going to be used for emergency vehicle access as well. But as you can see, we've created striping and signage to make sure that people know that it is right out only. We have also added bollards along Fairfax Drive to prevent cars from taking a left turn into that space. And then in terms of prioritizing pedestrians and helping them understand how to quickly and safely get to Fairfax Drive as they head east to the metro station, you'll see that we have stamped concrete pedestrian crossing there, as well as bollards adjacent to the sidewalk, lining the sidewalk adjacent to the building. Next. And this slide is where you can really see a lot of the constraints that we have with existing utilities along Fairfax Drive, which directs a lot of our design work in this area and has created some constraints. Once again, as we get to the landscaping, I'll show you where we are trying to add trees, where we think it will be possible. But once again, we will need to make sure once we get out on site that there aren't any unknown conditions that would preclude those trees from being planted. Next. And just quickly looking at the alley on the western boundary, you can see how the road slopes there. We are leaving, there's an 18-foot limit of disturbance line out from the western boundary. There are existing encroachments, and you'll also see a picture on or a identified area. There are fences, there are some sheds, there is a fence that opens directly onto the property. So there are existing improvements from our neighbors that are on the property today. Our plans right now allow those encroachments to remain, but there is no intention to give away any property or give up any property. And so while they can stay today, any future arrangements would be made with individual property owners. Next. And now just turn your head a little bit and just work with me because Fairfax Drive is now on the right side of this page. And this you all have seen before, I think in some detail. This is the 12-foot shared use path with landscaping on either side. You'll see leader walks coming from the triplex units as well as ground floor access to individual multifamily units. Going to the next page there. This just shows you once again, we want to look at the cross section. Next slide. Thank you. And this shows you that the ample space between the triplexes and the multifamily building, the shared use path, the walk that runs adjacent to the triplexes, and then adjacent to the multifamily building, once again, you have those lead walks and landscaping. Next. Focusing in a little bit more on the landscaping and especially the existing tree canopy on that western boundary. As you can see from this slide, we are minimizing removal of any trees along that boundary to the extent possible. There is one tree that's an invasive species that's going to be removed because we have to have a proposed turnaround. And then we have another tree towards the north that will be removed also due to that turnaround. The other trees that you see along that boundary, I think there are 4 of them, are just dead trees that we will be removing. Next. And this exhibit shows you the trees that we will be adding to the site. So in particular, as I mentioned up on Fairfax Drive, you'll see 8 additional proposed trees. They are within the vehicle turning sight lines, but as long as they stay limbed up, that should not be an issue. And then once again, on that southern boundary, adding trees along that area too. So we've outlined in red the dashed area where we hope to be able to provide those trees, intend to provide those trees, but just are a little bit cautious because of the level of existing utilities that are going to be remaining. And so we'll have to be careful as we move forward with that. In terms of stormwater management, I know that there have been a lot of questions about stormwater management next from the beginning of the process. And so we've really honed in on what we're going to be doing here. As you'll see, there's a 9% reduction of the existing impervious surface across the entire site. There is a 6-foot increase in the existing pervious buffer along that western property line that we just discussed. We will be replacing and upsizing certain existing county sewer pipes along the southern property line, which currently surcharge during large storm events. So we're going to be increasing those pipes to help prevent that surcharge. We'll be installing underground detention systems to control release of runoff into the existing system. We'll be installing bioretention planters and a level 1 green roof to treat the multifamily building roof. And then we'll be installing bioretention planters to treat the triplex units. In terms of community benefits, we will not have any on-site units here because we are using the Green Building Incentive Program as our bonus provision, but our base affordable housing contribution will be approximately $2 million. Our utility fund contribution is going to be approximately $230,000. We will have the standard public art contribution, the 12-foot shared use path along Fairfax Drive and running north-south through the property, and then also the 0.25 green building bonus. Moving on to sustainability measures, we do meet the county requirements, and as you can see here, and as Adam stated, we use the county's checklist for this, and we meet the county requirements for all of the required measures to get that 0.25 bonus. Next. So the estimated start of construction, if all goes well, we will start in the 4th quarter of 2024 or the 1st quarter of 2025 with the estimated initial occupancy 2nd quarter of 2027 to 3rd quarter of 2027. It's pretty difficult to give detailed construction plans at this level of design. We will bring a contractor on board. We will have a pre-construction meeting. We will have a community liaison who is available to meet with the community prior to construction, answer questions throughout construction. But we will need to work with the county to create a phasing plan, to identify our hauling route, to talk about any proposed work in the public right-of-way, temporary lighting plan, and construction worker parking. As many of you know, that there are standard conditions related to many of these items and standard policy expectations about how we do what we do once we come on the site. That is not to say that we don't understand that the community has a lot of questions because they live in the neighborhood. There will be some disruption, but we are going to do our best to limit that disruption to you. And once again, we'll have a meeting so that we can tell you what to expect and when in that regard. And then one other slide that I added to the presentation because it was a discussion at the last meeting and we said we would bring back a picture. So here you have it. We had talked about the bike room, right? And how it is a 2-level bike room. So hopefully you can see here how that works and kind of ramps up to that 2nd level. And so we're really excited about the ability to put all those bikes above grade and have easy access out that western side to the shared use path. So just wanted to follow up since we said we would, and that's it.
Well done on the time. We'll call it close enough. All right, this evening, we have 4 items on our agenda for our last SPRC. Questions, comments, and concerns regarding updates, the applicant proposal, followed by transportation questions that remain, landscape and stormwater management questions that are out there, and then finally communicate benefits and construction questions are out there. After that, we will turn to our public comment, to which we have at least one person. Do we have any more who've come forward, who'd like to speak public comment this evening? Okay, make sure you do enter before, and then we will do wrap ups. As this is the last SPRC, I will go around the table. I will ask each of you for a final closing thought and try to make it less than 30 seconds if you can. The goal is under 15, so. Oh, that. Changes, updates, comments, questions, concerns.
And maybe I've forgotten because I didn't go to the first SPRC. Have you met with the neighbors?
Yes. We had 2 meetings, I believe, that were virtual.
And what were their concerns?
They had a list of concerns, and I think because we were making pretty significant changes from the first to the second and the second to the third. And so I think we have whittled down a lot of their questions, but I'm assuming I will probably hear some more tonight. So we've been trying to work with them, but the changes, because the concept has been changing, some of the things haven't been nailed down until now, such as stormwater management. There were questions about circulation and traffic. There were some questions that I think have been obviated because, for instance, there were some questions about the distance from this to that, but now we took those single family home lots out of the proposal. So I guess I'll wait and see what we haven't answered and what remains to be discussed.
Landscaping question. So you mentioned there would be fire retention planters and level 1 green roof on the triplexes or level 1 green roof on the apartment building?
On the apartment building.
Okay, so the fire retention planters are on the triplex.
They're on the triplex and the multifamily,
And the triplexes are privately owned or are they being?
privately owned.
So who would be maintaining those fire retention planters? It would be the company that sold it or?
No, there will probably be an HOA.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be an HOA, so the HOA would be responsible for me.
Okay, and is there a planting list of what exact species would be planted?
We done that yet?
Not at this level.
That'll get clarified
Yeah,
at
that'll get-
CUP.
yes.
Okay.
Subject to revision.
I have a question. It's stormwater, but you want me to hold that or can I? Sure.
Let's hold it. I'm gonna stick to the agenda tonight, Jim.
Okay.
It's on the agenda. So this is strictly about any changes that we saw, the big one being the removal of the.
I just wanted to say that from first public engagement, I really appreciate the significant amount of change and the types of change that were presented, second iteration, particularly with. I think it's a way better project for the community, and also I think for the residents. Frankly, you're creating a residential experience here. You've now created a place that will be a better place to live, not also just a better neighbor. That doesn't mean that everything's perfect. I'm sure some folks will have some comments, but
Dang.
compared to, and I'm not a neighbor, but
Thank you.
compared to the beginning,
Yep.
compared to the beginning.
See that slide on.
Yeah, I do have one about the, eliminating that one stick of townhouses or triplexes. What is your intent for those 2 houses? Will they be sold off? Will they be redeveloped as something else?
They will be single family home lots, whether those houses stay or whether they're sold or redeveloped into 2 new single family homes. We really don't know yet.
Following up on that, the underlying glove still allows those lots to eventually transform into a townhouse, right? Just to add that.
Love, I don't think love.
The
The
change,
glove is different there than it is to the west.
off the top of my head, with the existing zoning that's there now that the zoning is no longer proposed to change, I don't know all the different residential types that would be allowed there by right, by site plan, but I think there was an issue with doing townhomes there if there wasn't enough zoning.
Yeah,
It-
no,
You would need to do like, I think you could do duplexes, you could do triplexes. There were some restrictions on it.
Well, and it could be that the zoning is inconsistent with the general land use plan, so someone would have to rezone it to do something.
It is,
Zoning being required.
Right,
yeah,
But
right.
I think the underlying glove is still.
I think you might be right.
And
I don't have that
the
quick
glove
look,
is
but-
not.
yeah,
Right,
Glove overlay.
right. The glove is not changing.
Right.
I'm just seeing what the potential of redevelopment of those.
So it's not an R zone. Or like an
It is an
R6.
R, it
It
is
is.
R6 zone with a.
No, it's R5.
So it could be AHO.
yeah.
Yes.
R6 or R5, I forget the exact.
So
R6 or R5 with a glove overlay on the map, allowing a rezoning application should Canterbury achieve it higher than an R6.
Right, but even under R6 or R8, under EHO, it could be a up to 4.
It can be whatever any
Right.
other lot in that area can be.
So it
Yes.
could
Yes.
potentially be back to. I mean, a lot of the changes were transportation. Where I was gonna jump in.
Go both ways. Right. Hands, you know, okay. Remember for our online participants, raise your hand virtually for me. Transportation. It was too small.
So patient.
Awesome. So yeah, kind of combining everything together. I think the changes are fantastic. Sad to lose. But I think bringing out access change just works so much better. Some concerns and questions about intersections being weirdly wide and all. So that's big. I think the fire department access has solved to a degree, pick up with that. The fire access, the private street, is shown as 26 feet wide. Is that because of fire department aerial access? Great.
I think they were smaller trucks.
I'm working. In the lay-by, there's some green striping now on the sort of two-way in and out section, which I think is smart and great. I don't see it on the right out. Is that an intentional choice? And if so, the car cross.
About the crosswalk.
Well,
The best I know.
right.
Tom?
The
Right side,
lay-by,
right
cars
side.
coming out of the lay-by cross the
Right there.
trail
Right side.
in two different spots.
Go down, go down.
And one has very clear
Feels like
green
left.
striping. and the
Oh,
other
I see
doesn't.
what you're saying. Oh, we may have just missed that. We could add that.
This one, but one thing. I was gonna say, I think that it's a little, just the intersections are a little different, so it's signalized there, so it's like a striped crosswalk with heads at the main, we call it the main intersection. So it's crossing, and I think we've been working with DES staff, and I think the intent would be the biker would possibly get onto Fairfax Drive at that point and get on the
Go
bike
out on the
lane.
street.
Which is why we added the striping, the green striping in the bike lane to draw attention to it, but again, it's something we can still work on. That's kind of the background of.
Nobody does that.
No one uses that.
Yeah, it's a death wish. It's a true death wish if you want to.
People keep this going on.
I don't.
Yeah.
I think so.
So if you want us
I wanted to
to, we can
ask
work with
if there
staff on
was
where
movement
they.
I don't think
or-
we
want
have
to-
And also, is the drive, the lay-by area, are here in front, grade wise compared to the sidewalk / trail, are they even?
It's
or-
flush. And then we have bollards. Jason. For that walkway.
I think that's what I have for now, but I don't promise not to come back.
David, then Jim.
Okay,
David first, then Jim. Sorry.
Just one, I know this is a little bit out of my lane, but just one comment, that the change in use of this space residential, I think is a big deal. Parallel to imminent opening of Boston Wetland Park, which is a big attraction for thousands of people. I'm concerned about how hot the traffic is when it comes off 66. And I just feel like, at least at a minimum, maybe stick in some rumble strips. I know it's not your territory to do it, but just from a DS point of view, it feels like there should be something as you come around that curve to sort of cool down things before you get to, the traffic light there at that intersection is clear on the other side, is on the east side of the intersection. It's 60 or 70 feet from where a car should stop, where those crossing lanes are. And now we're going to have a whole lot more pedestrian traffic and bicycle traffic coming through there. So it just seems to be like this is a good opportunity, and an important opportunity to try to slow down that stuff coming up.
If we all agree with that, we're people. Also remember personally, we have to do it.
Yeah, two things. That right eastern, right outright only.
Yeah.
I understand we need that for emergency access. That's the fire department essentially. They want that. Why can't that be treated the same as on the west side? That.
Because we have vehicles coming out of our parking garage that are going right only out of there.
But they could do that in the center where the traffic light is anyway. So it's a little more circuitous, but everybody then has to queue for the traffic light, eliminates one more cross where cars are going to be crossing, the pedestrians and the bikes going along there. It essentially means there's one active curb cut rather than two.
Right, no, we understand that, but we want the cars to be able to come out of the garage and take that easy right there instead of creating a queue at that signal, if they're going right only.
Okay, well, my opinion, I just soon have the queue there, and get rid of one more curb cut on a day-to-day basis. The bike room is great. I like the ramp, the internal ramp. I've never seen that before. I think that's really very innovative. The bike room, will you have sufficient space for cargo bikes? And will you have charging facilities? Because e-bikes are really coming in rapidly. And I can very much see residents there wanting to be able to charge their electric bike down at the garage rather than having to bring it up to their apartment, which I think you'd prefer to. So, can we get some information or think through what degree you need to have access to outlets along those bike stalls and have some that are large enough for a car? Those are my questions for now.
And following up on the biker, it's a ramp, not stairs. It looked like stairs on the plans, but it's been determined, yes.
You can walk
It's
it
a
right
ramp.
up. Yeah,
Okay, good.
I know, it's with the lines, it
Yeah.
looks like it's stairs.
And
Yeah, I wanted to ask things about the pedestrian. Will there be a redo of the sidewalks and curb ramps up to Fairfax Drive and or south?
So along our frontage, along Fairfax Drive, we will have a 12-foot sidewalk. And then there will also be
How much?
12-foot wide,
4 foot?
12
12.
12-foot, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then if you're coming from the south, north, through the property, we're not out at the street, but we're in the middle of the property, there will be another 12-foot shared use path for bikes and peds. But then adjacent to that, there's also a 4-foot sidewalk for pedestrians. So you'll be able to come from the south off of Wakefield or Woodrow and walk through the property on that shared use path. And it's lined with trees. And then you'll come up to Fairfax Drive and there'll be a 12-foot sidewalk along Fairfax Drive and crosswalks and ramps and ped heads to get people across Fairfax Drive.
Well, the one thing I'm concerned about having shared sidewalk. Sidewalk.
It's a sidewalk essentially, but it's wide enough for both
Yeah,
pedestrians.
particularly up in that area, I would be very sure that wheelchairs and blind people might reside there or come through the neighborhoods have to be aware. So that's one thing. And the reason I asked about getting up to Fairfax Drive, of course, that's the path that travel with the subway, but I wanted to ask, there was talk of, but it was some time ago, a new entrance to the Boston station being up there by Fairfax Drive and
Jane, when is our promised second entrance to the Paulson Metro? Coming.
Will we be
I
alive?
think it's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming.
But we don't know the answer.
In the CIP.
Yeah.
Not
so-
nothing.
And it's gonna be on the other side. It's gonna be.
On the other side of Glebe, yeah. The other side of Glebe.
That's not true.
It will be on the other
East side, I believe.
It's gonna be on the other side from.
This project,
Yeah.
yes.
Of Glebe. But, so you still have to worry about getting there. The other thing that I was thinking about was, is there gonna be a drive up, drop off for things like taxis and transit vehicles?
Yeah. So you can come in at the intersection of Fairfax Drive and the frontage of the building. There's the stoplight that's there now. Vehicles will be able to come into the site and there'll be a lay-by adjacent to the building where they'll have short-term drop-off pickup. So the Uber, the pizza guy, the delivery guy. So that will exist.
And then, what's gonna be the clearances of underground parking?
I'm sorry, the clearance in the underground parking garage? You can tell me the floor to ceiling height in the garage.
I don't think we've got that far, but I think it's definitely gonna be ADA compliant for handicap vans and for other service people.
Yeah, that's right, that's what I was checking on. And then.
At least, of course.
The door to, the main door to the apartment and from the garage and underground garage into the building, so there'd be, electronic.
Is there a vestibule? Vestibule to get
It
Yes.
basically, from an accessibility standpoint, it'll be, yes.
it? It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I guess that's.
Thank you, Doris. Any more questions? Transportation.
Yeah, just a question on, for EV charging is, are you going to make sure the, triplexes are wired to, be able to install level 2 chargers for the owners as they choose to? And also, what are you thinking in terms of parking in the, main building in terms of, I mean, you've got the 4% and 50 EV ready, but, with the, IRA, with the recent changes that, that's expected to really accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles. So you need to be thinking about having the conduits and being ready to be able to charge for, a lot more vehicles than the 15%. Ideally, hopefully, most people won't. But yeah, I think you need to be thinking part of the planning. Have you be at a disadvantage when you renters that won't rent because plug in their charge.
And we are planning EV chargers for both triplexes and the multifamily.
But will all the triplexes be available or have, at least the conduits? Because that, I would think that would be a little bit different than for the parking garage. Because they,
We are meeting the same requirement in the triplexes.
but I would almost kind of think about having the conduits
Understood.
for all of those
Mhm.
to be EV ready. Get go.
Okay.
Now, do they have garages in those buildings? Or
They do.
just- So again, that should be relatively easy as long as you've got the capacity. I don't have any of these.
Oh, it is, and the marketers will make sure that they do it once they look at the performance for the applicant who's going to be purchasing it.
I wanted to defer some time to the Balsam Park HOA. Do you know if they're on? They had questions about
Defer
transportation.
time to Boston Park HOA. They're a member of ours.
Are they a member? Okay.
Yeah,
They just have to raise their hand.
Yeah. John is
John or Zoom?
online.
John, you just have to raise your hand if you have a question. If you can hear us, call us.
But his is interesting because it's like.
That's
So-
John.
so it's
Go to the next one, go down one at
Okay, oh, I see, okay.
I elevated.
Let's,
You
Let me-
can't unmute him?
Can't.
Can't force unmute them. You'll have to call in. Yeah, there we go. You're unmuted.
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Yes.
I'm glad to have you join us.
Thank you for having us. We had submitted some questions, I think, in writing, which I don't have in front of me, unfortunately. And I think they had to do with the number of allowable spaces per unit and the overall increase to the traffic flow, especially along Wakefield and Woodrow, because we have units that front both of those streets.
So, I think I can address that. So first of all, if you look at our traffic study, it assumed that we had 502 units. And we actually have 463. So we were conservative in the traffic analysis that it assumed more units than are there today. So that then impacts traffic generation, is going to be lower than what you're seeing in that report. But as to the triplexes specifically, because those will be the vehicles that are going to Wakefield and Woodrow, we had 42 triplexes, which had 84 parking spaces. Those had 8 trips out in the AM peak hour and 6 trips in the PM peak hour. Since our last meeting, we have reduced the number of triplexes to 30. So those 8 vehicles going out become 6, and the 6 vehicles coming in become 5. Now, remember, we're talking about peak hour trips, right? So that is to say that yes, everyone will have cars, but not everyone comes and goes at the exact same time. And not everybody actually takes their car to the office. So some people will avail themselves of Metro, some people will work from home. And so we are using ITE standards and accepted county mode share data to achieve our analysis of what that impact is going to be. And so the impact of those 30 units will really be minimal. And I think that that is one of the biggest improvements to the project that we made since the first iteration, is to eliminate all that traffic through the residential neighborhood.
So if I follow you, the main building will not load or unload onto either Wakefield or Woodrow?
It will have loading. So we have a multifamily building that will have trash pickup and delivery and loading and unloading when someone moves into their unit. But there is no vehicular access for the multifamily building from Wakefield or Woodrow. All of the access for the multifamily building occurs off of Fairfax Drive.
Okay, thank you for that. Adam, is there any plan to adjust the parking spaces currently available on Woodrow and Wakefield? Are those still going to be subject to neighborhood parking, zone neighborhood parking?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'm going to defer to Jane Kemmis here from DES Transportation.
If it's currently zone parking, there's no plans to change what's currently out there. I would suggest if it were not zone parking, then you could always apply for that. But no, there are no plan changes to the existing on-street parking conditions.
And the streets will both remain two-way traffic streets?
Yeah, the streets themselves will not change from what's out there today.
So the multifamily building, oh, I'm sorry, I was talking. The multifamily building is intended to only have access to Fairfax.
Correct.
For the rest.
It is impossible for them to get access to the parking garage from the neighborhood to the south.
And is there a concern about the additional traffic onto Fairfax, especially peak hours? It can get fairly hairy coming from 66.
No.
I mean, no. It's a signalized intersection. Will we expect on, a rare occasion for, cars to potentially be backed up in the queue? Probably. I mean, I don't think that's an impossible occurrence, but it's all within the private property and not blocking the street itself. And so we, as DES, don't have as big of a concern as if it were to block the public street.
Well, that too.
Will the traffic signal timing be changed? to accommodate?
It can be. It will, you know, once the building is fully occupied, if there is some sort of continuous problem there, we can look at changing the timing.
I was actually more worried about people coming off of 66 being backed up.
I mean, that that's part of the, yeah, that's part of the intersection itself study and the quality of the level of service there. But
And you all think it's great? It's gonna work?
we do not think that this proposed development will be detrimental to the network itself, based upon the analysis that they've supplied.
So all of the intersections are always constantly being changed. It's scrubbed.
Well, you can submit that online too if you.
All right.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
I have a quick comment. I just want to associate myself with Commissioner Conley's suggestion of eliminating point of conflict with pedestrian on the right turn lane.
Any more transportation questions before we move on?
I do have one more. And I think I've asked it before, but pardon me if I did. Is there going to be any kind of visitor parking established anywhere? Or is it just expected that people will just park on Woodrow and wait?
We will have some visitor parking for the building 1.
Okay, but the triplexes won't
The
have it.
triplexes have extra space behind the unit, so there's tandem spaces in the unit. And then there's kind of an extra third space outside.
Like in the driveway.
Yeah.
There is an
the
extra
driveway.
third space out there.
Yeah.
They just don't count for zoning.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
It's like,
Because they're all
I'm
tandem.
blocking you in, and you're blocking me in, it's all having beers watching the game, so.
But nobody's blocking.
Nobody's blocking the park.
Okay, great. So we don't think it's going to spill out on the Woodrow. This.
I mean, I'm not gonna say it will never spill out onto Woodrow and Wilson, or Woodrow and Wakefield, but those are public streets, and outside of the permit times, you know, anyone can park on a public street. Nobody owns public streets, so there is some potential, sure, for people to park there, but that potential exists with any development that would happen.
I just wondered whether there are going to be, this might be a county question, but whether there are going to be multiple traffic signals and Fairfax Drive in Glebe and other intersections.
Fairfax and Glebe is currently on. Fairfax and Glebe is currently on.
Well,
For this,
About this.
for
one.
this main
Okay,
intersection,
but are they gonna change that?
I don't know of
I
any,
hope not.
I don't know of any plans to change what's currently out there today.
So. The, where the traffic is coming. I think somebody asked. I really think there needs to be some kind of signal that's visible, maybe sounding, and sure that if there is grant with there, are you going to use what type of permit? The ones without the curb or the ones that.
That's the kind of typical ramp with, the flare wings on either side. Right. Flared wings on either side, and it'll be flush to the sidewalk, so there won't be a curb between the ramp and the sidewalk.
So given how dangerous that, I would. Dollars. Okay.
Jane, I have a question for you.
Mhm.
And just to follow up with the neighbors here, so if the neighbors, I'm assuming that they have the RPP back there.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
So
assuming.
if their zones right now are, end at 5 or something like that, they could, as neighbors, petition and extend those,
Yes.
to try to extend those
Yes,
hours. So
they
just
could.
keep that in mind,
Mhm.
if, in case you would not.
Yeah, if there's a lot of spillover with non-residential
Yes.
parking, those zoned,
My neighbor.
those zone times can be looked at and reevaluated by, it's like, it has to be a certain percentage that's occupied by
But
like
it-
non-residents and things like that. So it is, there's a process to go through to get those times changed if, there's a need.
Well, I just wanted to associate myself with a couple other remarks while we're ending up transportation. This fine gentleman down here's remarks about trying to slow traffic coming off of 66, especially that right-hand lane as it approaches the world's deadliest weird bike lane there. Maybe wide or something, which doesn't encourage anyone to slow down. It would be great if we could tighten that up with something, or maybe we could use that space to give a bit of a gentle curve there to kind of remind people to slow down as they're coming in to an urban area. And then associate myself with Commissioner Lantelmi's remarks about the extraneous right turn out. I am particularly concerned because that whole sidewalk does get treated like a trail. People are coming westbound on a bike on that. And so somebody trying to make that free right out onto Fairfax Drive is going to be looking left for a break, and those people going way too fast and not looking to the right for a bike that's on that heading to the Vermont Junction Trail, or this lovely new trail that's getting built. And then also to associate myself with Commissioner Lantelmi's remarks about space for carbon bikes in the bike room, electric outlets, really, that's all it is. It's like called electric outlets for charging e-bike batteries. And then is there this entering into and out of bike room? Because it's a tiny door. It's a tiny door. Is it an automatic door kind of thing that you can push a button and it opens so that you can easily get your bike in and out? Or is it a manual, I have to kind of hold it open while
Hang up the door.
And your bike.
Do you know? I don't
So
know.
I think the answer is we haven't specified it yet. It's something that we can certainly consider.
Can I go back to the lay-by for a second? Because we were asked questions about short-term drop-off, pickup, Uber, all of that. That is happening through that lay-by. So we can't eliminate that right turn out, because then we would have no place for the Uber, the UPS, the pizza guy, and so that is kind of why that is there, not only to serve the emergency vehicles, but to allow for that. Because, as you just stated, we're on Fairfax Drive, and there's just no ability to do anything on Fairfax Drive. So one of the compromises with us, kind of flipping the whole design to put that building on Fairfax Drive was that we had to come up with a solution to allow for that short-term drop-off pickup. So that is really kind of the main reason why we can't get rid of it. We can certainly, continue to look at signage or think about kind of how do we do that to, number one, make vehicles aware, that there are going to be bikes coming through. I think if you move in there, come out there once or twice, you're going to figure it out, but hopefully not the wrong way. So we'll work with our traffic consultant to figure out, like, how do we sign it? How do we make our people aware that when you come up to that intersection, if you are, or if you're dropping someone off, if you're coming out that right side, to really prioritize the pedestrians and bicycles coming through there. So we'll take a look at that.
that's a fair point.
I now remember my second question that this prompted it. Last time I asked, did you or could you reach out to the office building next door rather than, because they have a driveway right now where there's a right turn out, literally right next to for this. They connect, instead of going straight out here, connect to their existing driveway, use their existing lane. It's difficult.
It's just,
working without the property
it's just really, we need to be able to have this project stand on its own, and we can't be kind of, it really isn't something that's viable. Yeah.
They'll redevelop.
Yeah.
They'll redevelop.
So it might be a clumsy solution or suggestion, but if we do not fix this right turn, like situation we're discussing, could there be a sort of the mirrors that have it bike trails that show us to the other side? So if someone's only looking left the whole time, they'll at least see a reflection of who's on the right, like a biker coming. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll take a look at it. I think our traffic consultants kind of have dealt with a number of situations like that, so we understand the concern and we'll take a look at it, working with Jane and her team.
This may be a spot where the sort of flush condition is actually not helping us. Better if the cars coming out of the garage had to go the sidewalk, but the street. I'm sure you got.
All right.
I have a quick question. Could you pull up page 6? And then I just wanted to add in addition to what you, Jim, there's a bunch of college kids in this area as well that are just not paying attention. So,
Did you put page 6 of the staff presentation?
yeah, applicant. I think it's the one with the right turn that we keep talking about.
Sorry, I'll get rid of this.
So here, I wonder about just the visibility in this area. You know, a lot of the traffic is going to come out here for the cars turning right here, as well as traffic exiting, or the pedestrians or people on bikes. Is there a visibility issue with how that's set up on that sharp, right turn with someone coming off 66 and trying to make a sharp right turn there at a high rate of speed? I just kind of see two people making a right turn and maybe someone trying to cross or get a bike. Have some questions on that.
So that area is a signalized intersection. And as I mentioned before, we are adding some trees because there has been a lot of I think interest among the public and staff of adding street trees where we can. We mentioned that we do have some utilities out there that may limit that, but in terms of the site distance, we can limb those trees up so that you'll be able to see. And also right there, you're at a signalized intersection, so it's going to be a little bit easier to see.
Gotcha. And then my second question on transportation, whether that, I think you said the parking ratio was 0.88. Is that zoning specified, or I just wonder why we went so high considering it's so close to Metro?
So 0.88 is a reduction from what zoning requires, and that's just for the multi-family.
Gotcha. I mean, do we think 0.88 is so the proximity to the Metro, or is almost everyone going to have a car, do we think, in that building? Or
I've never had a client who builds more parking than they think they need unless they're forced to. So I think, if you look at the market and kind of look at the current conditions, the 0.88 is, I think, the sweet spot that they think they need.
All right, we've got 2 more items, but given the fact that a generous amount of their community benefits is created by things, I'm going to sort of combine it and say questions, comments, priority, landscaping, stormwater management, community benefits like construction, entertainment. Don't need to go around the room, so try to summarize your thoughts if you can. Questions, comments. Jim?
Stormwater, right?
Go all 4 of them. Try to knock them all out.
Stormwater, the question is, this is actually for DES. The two big pipes that are going underneath the western part of the site, which is, I presume, Lover Run. Are those sufficient? Because we're having problems with Scout Run pipes being too narrow. Given everything that's been going on, are those pipes adequate given the changes we're getting, the amount of water?
Yeah, to my knowledge, they are. I know that we've been talking really closely with the stormwater team that deals with that type of storm. We have 4 stormwater teams at the county. And we've had many meetings with the applicant's engineer, and they've had to run flood analysis and run those types of numbers to make sure that there was sufficient capacity in the existing pipes, as well as no detrimental impacts both on their site and up and downstream.
And there's not overlay relief above it.
There's always an overlay relief path, right? Because there is. So when we look at overlay relief, we say all the drains clog, where does the water go?
So there's the slope down to the western side.
Stop right here, Jim.
Yep.
So water.
The overlay relief there.
Let me just share this.
It's basically the fire lane and the driveway for the triplexes acts as this large overland relief path for the water.
Okay, good.
Which is directly above
the pipes.
the pipes.
The pipes. The overland relief is always over top of where the pipes are or should have been.
Does that imply, is there any consideration into the elevation of the street so that it does support
Yes, so
That's
what
why I
we-
shut that
so
side
what
off.
we've done is we have analysis of the existing condition, because there is a parking lot driveway there today. And the existing building and the triplex are pretty much at the same location. So what we did is we analyzed in a 100-year and 500-year storm, that overland relief path, how does that water get? How tall does that water get? And then with the existing and the proposed development, and is it all within the property? And it is. And that's the study that we've been studying with the other groups at DES. We've looked at that analysis before.
And
That couple sections like what we're looking at.
And I'm sorry, you're part of DES?
No,
She's the engineering.
Oh, I see. I see.
So, and my colleagues in the stormwater group at DES have evaluated their analysis to make sure that they agree with their conclusions. And
Okay.
they don't have any
So in a
issues.
sense, they're concluding that this is providing the overlay.
Right, correct.
Because we know there's a lot of homes being
Yes,
purchased now.
yes.
Switching topics to affordable housing. It's going to be just the contribution. There are no on-site units.
That's correct. But because we have so much base density on the site, given the size of the site, it's a sizable contribution. It's about $2 million.
No, I'm not, I think that's a nice chunk of money. I'm not complaining about that at all. But given how close this is to the subway, because we don't know where that money is going to be spent. Really, you're going, tell you now, you're going to be running into questions at other commissions that why aren't there any on-site units? There really should, even with this contribution, there should be some on-site units.
So as a reminder, base contribution, fancy way of saying Virginia code. Virginia code allows the applicant up until the time of permit submission to choose its particularities, one of which is a cash contribution, the second of which is on-site units, and the third of which is nearby affordable units. And every applicant is preserved the right under state code to make that choice at any time they so choose. They will generally not say so, although almost every single applicant chooses the cheapest option because our state legislators approve of it, which is cash. Just want to make sure that the fact statement is out there so everyone knows all the facts around that. So we don't have any questions about that.
Had it been on-site units before, or was I thinking of a different site?
On-site units are generally available to the county as a negotiating tool in the event in which the applicant is not entitled to state code as their sole method of development. Does this represent anything, Council?
Let me take it back to 2003. No,
As the person who started this conversation about 8 years ago by asking the question 8 times to Ken, that's how you got to this. Doris.
Well, I hope that it is appropriate to say that given the size of this project and given its location, not only to metro station, major pedestrian assets, grocery stores, all on leave and all of that stuff. Plus, right next to a university, right next to 66, which could incentivize people who are going to, for example, George Mason University, either employed out there or students, to live in that building. I feel that it is a shame that we don't have on-site units there because of where it is and how good it would be for somebody to be able to access community assets. So that's what I wanted to say about that. I wanted to ask, related to that, I think you answered this question earlier on, but how many units are in the building? I think.
Yeah,
And so how many accessible?
so there's a requirement of, is it 2%?
2%.
2%.
It's all it's the Virginia building code that's.
They're gonna use the standard building code.
Correct.
Yeah, and so I also think that, at least from the perspective of the disability commission, at this point, you see that, again, because of all the assets that are around that building and the number of people disabilities who locate to Arlington. And young people in life. And also, because only 1% less housing according to is accessible. And, you know, we set ourselves in this target for getting to at least 10% of least for half to be fully accessible units. And we're so far behind that and just losing this kind of site. I mean, for a community benefit, it would be a great benefit if we all could see the way to on-site units. So that's it, except with regard to amenities, you know, the bricks and mortar in the building and
Private community benefits, my favorite conversation.
Okay, turn to you.
Residents get pool, gym, what else?
is there a pool?
Yes.
Yeah, and do we have that discussion? Because in fact,
Yes, so pool, gym, the 2-level bike room that we discussed. The whole frontage of building 1 on Fairfax Drive is what we are considering the amenity space. So we still have some work to do to actually place and size the specific areas, but to name a few. Fitness, bike room.
All right, we're gonna keep moving around. Okay, I see a lot of hands up, so given this is the last conversation, we're gonna go round robin around. Go back to public comment.
Thank you. Two categories. Yeah. The first is that this, as you know, this is the end cap of the Roslyn to Boston corridor. And I think it's going to be a pretty noticeable and attractive feature for that end cap. It's also pretty biophilic, and with the park across the street, you're going to have a biophilic experience opportunity for residents as well as all kinds of others around there. Now, that leads me to 3, I hope, quick questions about a little more detail on your green roof, air-friendly glass, and your dark sky standards. Because one of the things that comes with that situation and the opportunities for people is that sometimes the minimum put in the door achievement on those categories isn't enough to really provide the protection that wildlife need and for people to be able to experience positively nature in their daily lives. So 8 to 36 feet bird-friendly glass isn't enough here. On the park side, I think you need it there. Bird-friendly glass now, the technology and the production is so high that you're talking about tenths of a % difference in cost with finding the right manufacturer. So I would seriously suggest you look into that. But also, the green roof, is that going to be like sedum flats, just covering? Okay, so it's mostly an energy and stormwater thing.
Correct.
It's not going to be used or accessible by people. Okay. And then dark sky, it just, you know, this is a international trend, an international priority. People and wildlife. No uplighting, 90 degrees or down, and lower than 3,000 Kelvin in color intensity, because it's much less healthy for humans to have that higher intensity light, especially blue light. Or don't read your stuff before you go to bed. Well, it pertains to kids all the time. And it pertains to people who want to relax all the time, but it also pertains to wildlife. And you're right across the street from 4 acres of what will be producing more than 100 species of wildlife that everybody's going to enjoy seeing. But using weather radar just last night, 446,000 birds flew over. Migrating. It'll be up in the 8 or 10 millions when they come down to feed after flying 150 miles. They're ravenous and they'll go after anything on a branch. And they turn around and see another branch over there and they fly and whoops, that's a reflection. So it's worth the cost, especially as a residence. And then, so the final thing I just wanted to say about community benefit, and I don't want to take away from affordable housing at all. But in the public art master plan, there are pieces of it that talk about nature and using art to complement natural parks and using nature to complement artistic works, and even, I believe sometimes nature as art. So I'd recommend that maybe one very advantageous thing that you might want to get to Jane's colleagues on the other side, on the stormwater side, because it's basically their project. Now it's turned over to BPR because it's a part of this official park. So they probably need to be consulted too, but there may be some ways that you can contribute funds that would enhance the interpretive signage and the decor, the amenities that make it a place, not just a space, for people to enjoy. And, you know, I mean, it is, the county board approved the new name, which was elected through the Boston Wetland Park. Reston has something like this. They had scientists and educators and engineers and other people coming to see. This is amazing. This is basically urban infrastructure, and it is a wetland. You'll have 3 species of heron standing out there. You know, it's going to be pretty amazing. And so don't undercount the value of that for the end of this corridor. All the people who live, including the neighborhoods.
That's nice. And the public arts decision is made exclusively by the Arts Commission. It does not have desire for any. Just to be clear on that one, because many times going through that one. So, please.
2 issues. One is on the stormwater management and a better understanding of what percentage of the water is kind of retained, and what type of storm are you looking at? I know you looked at the 100 and 500 years, and that is mainly to conclude that whatever extra runoff you get, it's going to stay on the property. But more broadly from that, with, even, kind of 1 inch of whatever the kind of, they look at the standard. I mean, we're getting increasingly extreme storms, and that, of course, is, how the stormwater systems are designed is how much of the water is mostly retained on property and, captured in these basins and the roofs, and then allowed to, gradually go into the surface, into the water, rather than, the slow runoff into, in some maybe slow runoff into the system. But the idea would be to get most of it, and then what extent you may be looking at using pervious surfaces like on some of the walkways, and that would be a further addition of and increasing the ability to, kind of capture the water rather than allowing it to run off into the property.
Right, so we do evaluate the 1 year and the 10-year storm, or the 2 storms that we do like that. So we did the larger calculation just for the overland. The real, design is the 1 and the 10. So what we've designed is we have all these different systems, right? So the large multifamily building, like it's 20,000 square foot of that roof runs through bioretentions. Then the green roof on that larger building, all then tied to a detention system, which then does hold and slowly releases the water. And with the same time, we have each of the triplexes, has a rain garden that treats their roof water that then ties to this underground system. And we are doing as much as we can to capture as much of the there's a trench drain that runs in the large, called the alley that the triplexes are off of. So trying to capture that water as much as we can too, to kind of design these underground systems that will hold the water and slowly.
So what percentage, what percentage of water is gonna stay on property for the?
So I don't, I don't really have that number. I mean, I would say that we are collecting, the goal is to detain all of the roof areas.
Right.
And then as much as the vehicular areas that we can. And we looked at permeable pavement, unfortunately, like areas like that, the drive aisle for the triplexes, that's all on top of county utilities, like those culverts, you know, there's a lot of things going on here. So that's why we were looking at options. We kind of came to the green roof and said, well, we don't have those kind of constraints with the green roof. So we don't have as many permeable services. It just didn't seem to really work out with all the utilities. But the goal is to capture as much of the permeable impervious surfaces that we can and take that to the detention, slowly release it into the. I don't have a percentage of, I could get that. I don't have a percentage of what we're
That would be
capturing.
useful.
Okay, yeah, we can figure that out.
Get that feel.
Yeah.
Because you get all the descriptions of what they are, but
Kind of
what does it actually mean? Put it all together is useful.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other issue is on the building systems and energy efficiency and particularly electrification. Looking through the energy model, it did seem to suggest that you could get gains of energy efficiency, although it wasn't very clear, of 25% or more. And it would be kind of helpful to see, you know, how kind of the pathway there, but probably most important, and they work together is actually building towards all electric systems from the get-go. And that is what's really consistent with the county's goal of getting to zero carbon emissions, and especially when we're looking at a IPCC target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. It doesn't have to keep adding on it. Now, looking at the energy models and the systems, it does look like you're going for all electric systems for the HVAC systems, which is probably better than what some of the standards are, especially with the DOES systems, which tend to use gas-fired systems. And then it looks like you're going to use heat pumps with the energy with the electric auxiliary. So that's good, but it's less clear on what you're doing on hot water. I think you're planning a centralized gas-fired boiler for hot water for the larger buildings within unit electric buildings. And it would, again, the energy model does suggest that there are opportunities there of going straight heat pump, either a kind of a centralized heat pump or in-unit heat pumps. And actually, and for the triplex too, is that the energy efficiency gains of heat pumps are quite tremendous, like 500% energy efficient. So that would certainly save all the tenants a good bit of money by having those, as well as actually heat pump dryers are good now too, is that, and that will help build on the energy efficiency. But it seems to me, looking at the energy model, that you have a good pathway of actually getting to an all electric building. And that would be, you know, strongly encourage you to do that. Because again, it's mentioned in the energy model is the long-term perspective is all electric. So let's, you know, try to see it, and then, you know, what are the barriers that might be problem or be an issue for that.
And move on to Chris.
There weren't any slides on construction phase. Is that up in the air right now?
Yeah, we haven't finalized those.
That's 6.5%.
So my concern, and I would love some details before this, is the Bluemont Junction Trail essentially that ends into your property. And so unless you are making some accommodation during construction of how those folks are going to get eastward into Ballston, they will not be able to. So I understand at some point you have to build the new Fairfax Drive sidewalk. But I hope that there is an opportunity with your very smart people on your team to perhaps have built already some other portion of the site that can serve as circulation for those folks so that they can continue eastward into Ballston on some sort of facility. Or perhaps that 16-foot lane on Fairfax Drive is some space that we can use to get people to work. So,
We not love
other than
Can I
that,
can I add to that one? The concern on that specific topic came up in our association. People are worried about students in particular. There's also people, business people and others, but they're worried about students that take that follow that path. And how are they going to get through and get over to Washington Liberty or other schools? And they're wondering about, they assume there's going to be something that happens.
Yeah, the thing about that,
But
that's,
let me finish.
Yeah.
But will there be some kind of notification that goes out to parents? Explain, this is the change, we understand there's gonna be something that happens.
right, so that's what I was gonna say, it's so hard at this point to figure that out, right? Because the construction will be very complicated. To your point, we have to do work on Fairfax Drive. We know that we have a lot of pedestrians and bicycles coming along that frontage. So there is going to have to be some solution to get people from point A to point B. And sometimes it may be possible and other times it may not. And to your point, kind of how is the community gonna find out about those changes? I don't have an answer for that right now, actually, but we will be having that pre-construction meeting, and at that point, we will have a lot of detail. And we'll probably have a better idea where the contractors can tell you, for this amount of time, it'll likely be open, but then there's gonna be an X period where it's gonna be closed, and here's how we're thinking that we might handle that. So I think the closer we get to construction, probably the easier it will be to go over all those details, and then to your point, figure out, what do we do if there's some type of big change from what we're anticipating.
It's gonna be DES, and it'll be up to the construction until it's gonna be post approval. There's no way we can really base it and plan at this point. Actually have all the construction people on payroll and know who's going to be planning what, when and where. But that's the way that process works. And DES is involved.
Yeah, there will be a MOT plan, which is maintenance of traffic, which talks about any vehicular or ped bike detours that will need to be put in place and things like that. So all of that gets submitted and reviewed and approved through the county. And I saw the note about students and things like that, and we can potentially loop in APS's safe routes to school staff as well if we need to make sure that they're aware of any big changes to Fairfax and the accessibility of the pedestrian infrastructure there. But there will very likely be some sort of safe path. We don't know what it looks like yet or where exactly, but that's always the goal. That's always the goal,
What I guess,
is to make sure people can still get from point A to B safely, even though there's, giant construction site. And then this isn't the first site on Fairfax Drive. I mean, we've done these before too.
I guess what confuses me a little bit, and this is my first, it's not, you're a commissioner, or I believe, and you were saying, where is the construction briefing? But then you're saying, oh, no, we can't talk about construction until after approval. Why would we not be talking about construction now to some level?
I
don't understand that.
I think we are talking about it to some level, but I would be making it up if I told you today, for 6 months, it's gonna be this.
And what precedes is going to be the
Yeah,
plan.
yeah.
And the plan itself will be subject to the amendment of staff at a later date.
Yeah.
The problem I see it as somebody representing people who live there is that the plan is going to get approved and then they're going to get told, this is what you have to deal with. In fact, I think your words, I wrote them down because I sort of took exception to them earlier, right? That you said, we will tell people what to expect. We will tell you what to expect. That doesn't seem, maybe it's Arlington County process, but shouldn't that be part of this conversation so that the neighbors can actually hear what the plan is and have a chance to input it into it before we approve the plans?
Well,
maybe this is not an approach. Maybe this is a site that can't really be built on because it's going to impact too many people.
Well,
That's a bit of an exaggeration, of course, but why is that not being talked about?
So let me clarify, when I said we'll tell you what to expect, what I meant by that was we have these pre-construction meetings. And at those pre-construction meetings, we tell you what to expect because now we have the building designed, we have the contractor on board, and the contractor is going to say to you, Okay, so what we expect is for the first, 3 months, we're gonna be we're gonna be clearing and grading, or we're gonna be demoing and clearing and grading. And then the next 6 months, we're gonna excavate and sheet and shore. So when I said us tell you what to expect, it's from a construction standpoint of how this building is going to get built. Is there gonna be pile driving? Because we have a garage, there'll be pile driving. I'll be able to tell you, based on the size of this building and the number of piles we need to drive, and, it will take us approximately this many weeks. And so that's what I meant by that. In terms of the pedestrian accessibility and how we kind of get people from one place to another, it's not me saying, oh, here's what you can expect. I'm going to have to go through, or my client's going to have to go through a process with the county, whereby the county's involved and is saying, yes, that makes sense. It's safe, it's accessible, it allows you to construct the building, it doesn't interfere with traffic. So it's not us dictating that. It's kind of a group effort. I don't know if you want to address the part about the community or how they.
Yeah, I mean, the pre-construction meetings where they talk about both construction and kind of site access, while they're not necessarily a public meeting like this, will have an opportunity for residents to make comments to the the contractor at the time. And if there needs to be something changed because of, there's a very specific thing that the residents are, concerned about that no one really realized because it was a very neighborhood specific issue, that can be, those plans can change and can kind of meet the needs of the neighborhood that will be accessing the site during construction. And, the applicant will then have to go through a process where they can't do anything until they resubmit plans and things like that. And so that will all happen as well. But the other point I wanted to make was just that, the site itself, we know, right, only has access on that Fairfax frontage and then the 2 access points from Woodrow and Wakefield. Like that's something that we all know. And so site access during construction will also be on Fairfax and likely from Woodrow and Wakefield. I don't know what that looks like exactly. They're gonna, provide that information to the community and the county kind of at the same time. We don't necessarily, we don't necessarily weigh in on means and methods. We, we have plans that we are provided and we address the technical requirements. And then we have people in place like the construction managers and the liaisons and our inspectors that make sure that the construction is being done in a way that was promised, more or less. And so there,
That's what
yeah.
we should hear here is what was promised. We should hear that in a public forum, not what you describe as things that are happening behind closed doors that the public's not really invited to. Right?
But
This
I would
is-
say that we
this is
don't-
a very important
but
topic.
what I
that's
was
gonna
saying
affect
is-
a lot of people that live in development. And we know anecdotally in this county, right, lots of development and a lot of people have been impacted. I'm sure this is a constant problem.
It's always an evolution. Change is always most present when it's in. And so I've heard you. I hear you. I think Chris has already he teed up that question to encourage the applicant on what he wants to see when it comes to the commission. Is there a current plan, knowing that it's going to change, and that is part of the process. And that's what Jane and Ellen are showing you, because it does change because it does respond to real world instances that happen. They don't know it until they try.
But the process so far hasn't shown us anything.
Because we don't know the answer. We don't have that.
It's
not required for us to provide it to get the 4.1 approved. It is required to have this conversation like we are having now to hear your concerns about, hey, when you guys are looking at your construction and your MOT, here's what we're really concerned about is this access along Fairfax Drive. It really, I don't think is intended for us to have all those details.
Yeah, so I want to move on to this, but I'm just going to lay it down that state code is what drives us in Virginia, and Commissioner Slatt is trying to help by asking for the preliminary plan and stuff. That's what's his goal in the question. And it's an above and beyond request. The applicants sometimes choose to provide and other times have the right to remind us that the state of Virginia is the God supreme of all landowners here and does not generally go beyond state code. So just to make sure that conversation is clear. So I want to move on to Jim's question, but just to make sure what Chris was teeing up there and how it can evolve, because I hate when people don't know what the state code allows, which is that we do not have a magic sword in Virginia that allows us to cut against limited rights inside of their.
It's just, it was a topic that was listed for today, construction.
And, right,
And so you'd expect to hear about construction.
and we found out their phasing plan for when they anticipate getting financed and going to construction and actually incurring these. So that you as a neighbor can look forward and say, hey, is this gonna happen in July? No, it's not. It's going to happen in these out years. That's what they show. Jim. I think, fire.
Couple questions on landscaping. Roughly what, 23 trees you had rigged in that dotted line saying you don't know whether or not because of the underground utilities, are those, if they can't be planted in those locations, are they going to be planted elsewhere on the site? Or just no trees at all in that sort of an alternate landscaping treatment?
Yeah, our intention is to plant them. So let me be clear about that. Like, we have looked at it. We think, we hope we can plant it. But if we can't plant those trees, Gabby, what?
Yeah, the intent is to find another place within the site as best as we can. But as you all know, each tree also has a minimum soil volume requirement. So we're not gonna get away without providing that. So there's only so much soil that we can provide. So as you can see, we've maximized, and actually, quite frankly, personally, that sense of arrival to the gateway property that you mentioned, it's gonna be incredibly enhanced by all of these extra trees that we hopefully.
But to the extent that we can't do a tree.
To the extent that we can, yes.
It
And
would
so we will, before we start like nixing trees, because we can, we will try to find the best location.
No,
Absolutely.
but also, there's not a lot of room, like you said. So if a tree has to go, let's say a couple of trees, let's just say, I'm just gonna pick the 3 on the east.
Yes.
Would you then do shrub plantings there? What would go in place of those?
Landscaping, I mean, the trees are in a landscape bed, so whether there's a grass strip as a DOT standard, or whether there's an interior plant bed, they will have a landscaping bed, number one. But if we stay with trees, one, that will be relocated if we can provide the soil volume. If not, there would be some other green.
And following up on trees and the Fremont Junction Trail and the new trail, be sure to select species that don't have a lot of root heave. That's the thing that kills our trails in the county more than the actual usage of the trails. It's the roots of the trees pushing up.
So I see what you mean.
Thank you.
And yes, we hear loud.
We wrap up comments,
No,
right? No.
we're gonna get there real quick.
I thought this was wrap up comments.
No.
I have 2
Trying to
comments,
get the
actually.
public
Gotcha, 2 comments. I sense your frustration on, being able to impact this. I wonder if the applicant would be able to, when those plans are available, would you be able to connect with that civic association to get their input? That's something that you can do.
Well, that's what the pre-construction meeting is for, once we have this.
Perfect. So I think we're just like weighing in a little too early, but as soon as those are available, we don't want to have to go back and change it. It would be better to kind of have you part of the process. So I trust that they'll do that. The second thing that I want to mention, and not to beat the drum, but I'm also the president of the NAACP here. I have to lift up the affordable housing. I just have a question. When was the last time that, it sounds like you're not the developer, you're representing them, is that right?
The developer.
Gotcha. When was the last time that you have put on-site units?
Any of our projects. Because I don't run all of them and know all of the.
Sure. Gotcha. I just think I understand the law. I understand what needs to be changed. I understand that innately, but I also understand the values that we've established for our community, and I understand that the impacts that redlining have had on communities that look like myself. I worry that we're going to get to a place in 50 years where we look back at concentrating poverty in the way that we do in Arlington, and we'll have the same feelings for how we look back at redlining now and say, oh my goodness, like, how could they do this back then? But, right now we concentrate poverty, and we know that those folks are ultimately predominantly Black and brown folks. And but yeah, my opinion is modern day redlining. I understand the law doesn't require you to put them on site, but I think we're a better community when we can all live together. So I just wanted to like that. Thanks so much.
I'm assuming that when this goes for rent, that it will be, at market rate. And that poses a problem because a lot of people that live here who then tie up more than 50% of their income trying to, just pay their rent, never, ever get a chance to position themselves as a homeowner someday, if that's what they want. So I feel very strongly about affordable housing. I just don't understand it's the right thing to do. So you really need to think about that before you come in front of at least the planning commission where I'll be sitting. I would say that I align myself also with Doris's comments. A lot of times it's just not enough to do ADA stuff because it's just in the code or whatever. And I strongly recommend an offline conversation with Disabilities Commission to make sure that you've looked at some of the things because you really want it to be something that is inviting and accessible for everybody. I also align your comments on the bird friendly. I'll be looking for that at Planning Commission. I would like before Planning Commission when we are at the Planning Commission step for this, I would like to actually see some details on the plantings, not just, oh, we're gonna have this and some native or whatever. I'd like to see some specifics. Because we always get these plans, we never know, we're supposed to approve them, there's people that are upset about them. We want to hear that. And last but not least, since there's been so many comments here tonight, and so many times in the Boston area where we've had construction and neighbors later, like, the construction liaison, we met with them once, we never heard anything. I cannot impress upon you enough the importance of the communication with the community liaison. And it's not just, oh, we have this meeting now. I mean, you've got residents who are like, hey, wait a minute. They said that this wasn't going to start until 7 in the morning. It's 6:30. Who do they call? Ghostbusters, because it's just like no one's around. A lot of times when you're going by these construction sites now, the folks who are on the ground have no clue the conversations that we've had at this level. So it's really important that you drill down with your communications so that the people, who see these people every day aren't going to be doing something that we didn't think was going to be part of this. So I can't, communication is just so much in this. So please, 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 not just have a name and a phone number, really communicate all the time. If there's going to be a change in the way the trucks have to go because of a certain day, let them know. If there's going to be a change, just let them know. That way, you're going to have a lot less pushback. And really, at the end of the day, these are going to be the neighbors to the people in your building. So those are my comments. Thank you.
There's 400 neighbors.
Yes.
Got nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, I've got several questions. There was on page 11 of the presentation from the developer, there was a note, it said adjacent property encroachment.
And that was what I was talking about with the fences and the shed. So there's a shed, that person's property.
I'm not.
Oh, okay. Hi, how are you? So that property, our property line, their improvements go over the property line into our improper. So there's a shed and there's a fence there. And as I mentioned during the presentation, we have designed our project around it. We do not currently intend to make you move anything, but we're also not going to just give up that land, right?
Oh,
So, yeah. So but right now, everything will just be as it is.
So there's no, you mentioned like adding, like plantings and retaining wall, then I guess that would, I didn't see anything.
Yeah, so there is a turnaround, right? A vehicular turnaround. So I mentioned that those 2 trees are gonna have to go away and there will be some pavement. But as far as I know, Karen, we've designed our improvements to avoid that fence and shed, right?
Yeah, the curb is further from the Curtis today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the curb is gonna be 6 feet,
Further
farther
away.
east than it is today.
Oh, it is.
But don't move your fence.
I'm not gonna move. I'm not gonna move anything. My house in 2010, we learned that was actually snow.
Got it.
We were like, okay, I don't know why the fence jumps out like that.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah. No
That's
problem.
basically my public comment.
Man. They're being a first good neighbor move, which is not moving your shed. Take that.
At the last meeting, we talked about the green space that's directly to the south, kind of that southwest corner. There's a wall, and was that going to be opened up or not?
Yeah, we are not planning to open that.
Not planning. And then there was a note about off-site renewable. What does that mean? What does that amount to?
Yeah, so as one of the green buildings.
Rachel, do you want to introduce
Oh,
yourself?
sorry, I'm Rachel Nicely. Offsite renewable as part of the green building incentive policy. One of the prerequisites is to provide some options for this project. We are going to position ourselves as pursuing offsite purchase. Tier 2 renewable.
But off-site means like not next door.
Prince William County.
Somewhere far away.
But I mean, I read it as if it was some sort of benefit, but how does
It is,
it?
it's part of the lead, so
It's a requirement, but you have to maintain it, or you can just do it 1 year and then not do it the next.
They're becoming lead certified as part of the request from the staff to get extra density, and as part of meeting that process.
I think it's a 10-year commitment for annual, to a certain.
Depends, right, on
Like,
the-
it's for a certain percentage of electric energy use.
Yes, correct. So it's for one lead.
Was there a
Got it.
reason there wasn't room for rooftop solar?
We're still studying that, but at the time, we're gonna be able to position ourselves for the offsite renewable.
Their lead scorecard can change, like they choose all the way through. Reminder. All things state code allows, but they will have to still retain the goal.
Yeah.
And the technical point just goes
Exactly.
quickly though. So
Yeah. Solar panels, almost all solar panels work more efficiently, 8 to 15% with the vegetated roof, because it keeps the ambient temperature low enough that those electrical takes perform better. So while a roof with gravel might be 140, 150 degrees in the middle of the sun, that's going to reduce the performance. Whereas with vegetation, it'll be like 95 up there. And that makes a big difference. And it's not more expensive than what you would do if you were going to have solar anyway. So you can sort of double dip.
David, I always love
looking into.
I love it when I learn stuff. That's it. We have online.
I have one last question.
Okay.
It's on stormwater. It looks like some good stuff. What I'm wondering is, are you just meeting the state laws or are you exceeding the state laws? Meeting. Okay, so that retention looks great, but it's really just kind of meeting the basics.
Jim, we have Jim online and we also have John. Jim,
Yes.
anything on we still have wrap up comments, so just right now.
Right.
Anything, Jim?
Yes. I think this will be a nice addition to the neighborhood. I especially appreciate the improvement of the shared trail connecting to the Bluemont Connector Trail. As a frequent user of that trail, both biking and running and walking, I would appreciate any improvement is better than what now exists. And I appreciate the access from the west side of the property back to Wilson Boulevard. I think that will be used also. I would also add that, if I'm not mistaken, the management of transportation document is a public document and will answer some of the questions that have to do with the maintenance of the management of transportation on the project. So, and that's accessible to all of us. Thank you.
John, do you have anything you want to add on this particular subject before we get on to public comment? If you have any, and then check up the record. John? Zulu?
Nothing further from me, Adam.
Okay. Now we got wrap up comments coming and wait, first public comment, sorry. We have any more public comment? Bernie, online, I got 2 minutes for you, Bernie, and we're ending on time tonight, so it's starting. You ready? Are you online?
Yeah, I'm on, okay? Hear me?
Got 2 minutes, go.
Okay, this applicant should not get the bonus density for the building. He has not responded to the comment that I sent to all of you, and I made the last meeting. And This particularly involves a trail that will travel north-south through the site, that curving trail. It violates half the things that are in the, a number of things in the bicycle element of the master transportation plan. First of all, that trail is going to have very little use. You do not put a 12-foot trail in for something that's not going to have much use. If the plan specifically says if it doesn't have much use, it should be 8 feet. That's in there. Now, the other big thing is, the plan also says separate pedestrians from bicycle traffic. Well, that's very simple in this case. You have that street at the west end that kind of dead ends up near Fairfax Drive. You put signs there that will direct the bicyclists to go down that street. That means very few people with cycles will be using the curving trail. That will be for pedestrians. This is how you divide things if you follow the master plans, which you're not. And this is I'm a transportation commission because you just don't do this and get away with it. I mean, it's simply bad planning. Narrow that trail to 12 feet to 8 feet, and direct the bicycle traffic to that street on that dead end street at the west end. At the west end, it's going to have very little traffic. You can put a bicycle lane there if you wish. Probably don't need it, but you can. The other thing is, as mentioned, I ask you at this meeting if you could give us a final some basis of the planting list for the landscape plan. No, you haven't done it. Now, this architect that you've hired never does it. This is not the architect that you should be hiring, because we need that information before what plants are there. Because some are going to be invasive. In many cases, half of them are invasive. They're not on the invasive species list, but they're invasive somewhere else. Second, you need common milkweed for monarch butterflies. Well, you practically never put common milkweed in there. This project, when you get down to the details, this project simply stinks.
Bernie, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Want to get on to wrap up comments. We've now heard our public comment. I'm going to go online first so I don't get them. Jim, followed by John, and then we're going to go there and come over here to the doors. Jim?
I have no more comments.
And the goal is 15 seconds, but I'll give you 30. Keep going. John?
I have nothing further, but do appreciate the interaction here.
Thank you, John. Nope.
What are you pointing at?
David?
I have no further.
This is wrap up comments.
Yeah, no, I have nothing else.
Yes, okay.
I think the project has improved, to a point that I think it's really an asset to the community. I think we started in a bad thing. So this is thanks for the team for sort of working with the community, even putting it in pause. I think generally speaking, it's good. I will second David's comment on the solar panels and urban farming, put a plug in for urban farming. That's it. Thanks.
You come back to me at the very end, please.
Only because it's you, the end. Not that SPRC. No ever will do that again. Mike?
Yeah, just when you come to the housing commission, please be prepared to speak about the on-site units and then your history of how you contribute. Thanks so much.
I second the on-site units comment as well as supporting the green roof.
This is a great project. Rarely do I see a project evolve as much as this one has over time. It's responsive to comments. Sure, we're more units here, but you have a 40-year-old sector plan. So that's for a different day. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to align myself with what Commissioner Bagley said earlier, and David was saying earlier, both affordable housing and for friendly glass and the other thing. So very good, tremendously improved project from when we first saw it, where it was just simply not acceptable. Thank you.
I do applaud the applicant on great progress on this project, especially from a transportation perspective. It's come a huge, long way. Very pleased to see it. And yeah, that's it.
And overall, a good project. Do appreciate the changes made, but I would again strongly encourage you to make that extra step to make it all electric from the outset and make sure that we're really going to be consistent with our carbon neutrality goals, and maybe even consider geothermal, which would give you another huge boost in terms of energy efficiency.
From the comments we've heard about the state code, we might think that Virginia is very conservative about this. But in light of some of my comments about the wetland park across the street, I just want to suggest that everyone just take a few minutes sometimes. We Google Virginia Wildlife Viewing Plan. In 2021, the state of Virginia published, after a year and a half preparation with lots of public consulting and scientists, a plan that sets out goals for making it possible for residents of Virginia to view wildlife wherever they live, whatever their walk of life, whatever their economic level. And urban nature is a big part of that. So this isn't just a sideline. This isn't just a little amusement. We know from biophilic studies that this makes people happier and happier, better. So nature is part of the prescription having a life.
Closing comments, Doris?
Well, I appreciate that you have given a lot of information and that you have been willing to, for example, for the disability commission, giving us meeting accessibility codes. But when it comes to community benefits, I think that it's very important to realize that the law, the ordinances, whether they're accessibility ordinances or affordable housing or whatever, are minimums, and they don't prevent the county or developers from going further, and with the environment too. So the things that are brought up in site plan review, I think we need to seriously hear the community and think about you can do more. And so that's what I want to say, instead of just thinking about, because I've heard it so many times, well, we're supposed to do that, so that's what you do. And I think it's important to think about people in the community and
Just because it's my last SPRC that I'm chairing. Yeah.
That's exactly why I asked to go last, because as your fellow planning commissioners here, we wanted to do something a little special on you because.
No, don't do this. I'm sentimental. Right.
For everybody, give them a round of applause. So no, I just want to say, you know, us planning commissioners here, the things I have learned.
Because I no longer have to worry about questions that I say should be asked, being asked instead. Thank you all. And I have to keep my record going. All right.
Thank you.